Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 8th, 3:06 p.m., and I hereby call to order the Budget Committee of the Memphis City Council. Mrs. Keaton, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Ford. Present. Councilman Spinoza. Here. Councilwoman Green. Present. Councilwoman Cooper Sutton. Present. Councilman Warren. Present. Councilwoman Walker. Present. Chair Carlisle.
Present. The chair observes highlights one more time, and then, you don't go and, we'll.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I can, I was just going to run through, Philip Davis, Solid Waste Division Director. I was going to run through the formal presentation real quick and then dive into questions. Okay. Thank you everybody for the opportunity to present to you. This is the Solid Waste Division's FY25 budget increase, budget presentation, sorry. This is my org chart. These are the legal levels of the Solid Waste Division. FY25 operating budget request. Our priorities include the safety and security of our employees and property, adding employees to better manage waste and rebalance routes, bringing employee wages up to match their skill and market value, establishing a 10-year replacement cycle for fleet, establishing a strike team to fight blight, establishing convenience centers to promote a cleaner city, rehab and ultimately replace the Bellevue transfer station, communicating to our customers the solid waste rules and proper solid waste etiquette, investigating, monitoring, and maintaining our legacy disposal and Superfund sites. FY24 expenditure bridge. We're requesting $15.3 million increase in expenditures for FY25. Program comparative spending. This is our program comparative spending for FY25. Details on the next slide. This is the FY25 year-over-year changes in expenditures. The expenditure increase is largely due to the addition of employees for route rebalancing and blight management, as well as bringing wages closer to market value. We will also establish a team to communicate and enforce solid waste ordinances and policy. This is the FY24 to FY25 revenue bridge. Details on the next slide. We are requesting a $21.2 million increase in revenue, largely through a fee increase. We are also requesting $2 million from the general fund in FY25 alone to balance our first year and lessen the initial impact of the fee increase. We are also forecasting additional revenue from our blight enforcement activities. This is our division authorized complement. We propose an increase in complement, 102 collection crew members, 20 communication and enforcement personnel, and 11 strike team personnel. Our major M&S expenses are $7.8 million in shop charges, $3 million in fuel, $1.5 million for transfer station and convenience centers, $900,000 for facility security, and various other smaller increases. Here's our professional services detail. Superfund site maintenance and compliance is the largest spend. Support for our accounting and rate structure modeling, and also our recycle cart loan payment are the major components of this. We don't have any leases. Our minority total MWBE spend certified and non-certified is 32%. 14% of that is certified, and we are always looking for opportunities to improve this. And that's, and I apologize for the speed, but I know that there are going to be a lot of questions. So
It was awesome. It was the best presentation ever from a timing standpoint. Send that through the divisions. Okay. Before, as people get in the queue, and I'm sorry if I don't see you, just yell my name. A couple things just that I'd like to get for later, or at least let's just talk about them now. And this is kind of for everybody. Lease payments on all of these presentations are real estate related. Can you break out for the council any capital expenditure, capital leases? Because I think why don't you walk us through, let's do this. Okay. Walk us through your assets and how we operate your fleet first. And then we're going to jump into personnel and talk a little bit about personnel, and then we'll move from there. Because personnel is where a lot of the shifting and changing is happening. But I think it's important for council members to kind of understand how, I typically don't want to get into operations, but I think it's important for this context because we're kind of outside of budget, so to speak.
Right. So fleet-wise, we have between 400 and 450 pieces of rolling stock that are operating within the division. That can be garbage trucks, recycle trucks, dump body trucks, grapple loaders. That's supervisor pickup trucks, manager sedans, just different pieces of equipment like that. We also have a few pieces of specialized equipment. We've got yellow iron. That's wheel loaders that have a 4-in-1 bucket that pick up bulk waste out in the routes as well. They look like something you'd see on a construction site. And we also have some larger pieces of equipment, tub grinder that reduces the volume of woody material, grinds it into mulch. We have larger compactor type equipment that works at the transfer station, pushing waste into trucks.
And on your major equipment, the things like our trash trucks, and the actual solid waste truck, et cetera, what is the life of the equipment on a calendar basis, not miles?
Yep. The years of service industry standard is typically 8 to 10. Currently, our fleet is averaging about 14 years old.
And Antonio, what does that do to the general services team?
That increases our labor charges, and of course, it also increases your parts and material.
Yeah. So I think. Yeah. Go ahead.
One thing to consider: solid waste, as well as the other divisions, they budget, and that's the budget of the revenue side for fleet. Fleet has its own budget, and that's the expenditure side.
You got it.
Both line up.
Yeah. I just think it's important to talk about, again, for my fellow colleagues, I think it's important to put some of that stuff into perspective because you've got capital expenditures that we take debt out on to buy, or we lease these vehicles, which is, essentially a capital lease. And so there's a cost benefit to trying to be responsible with your assets versus the increased year in, year out expense for labor and trying to find parts for some of these older equipments. I think it's your division. We're machining parts, trying to machine certain parts on this equipment.
That is correct.
So I think that's important, just to put into context as we look at why some of these things are going to be necessary going down the road. How many of your vehicles, major equipment vehicles, are leased today? Do we know? Or do you know what that lease number is? Because that's one of the line items I was looking at, materials and supplies, is just to see what the annual lease.
Let me get that total number of pieces of equipment. We had a debt service roll off.
And that's what, now you get where I'm going.
Right.
Okay, that'd be great. And then will you talk about the Bellevue transfer station and how it's fit into the context of the solid waste fund?
Okay.
Because I think, again, colleagues, I think this is just important context when some of us were elected in 19 was when this conversation fired up about the solid waste fee and increasing it and setting up the fund and some of the projects it had anticipated doing. And so if you can just kind of touch on that, just for his, again, context as we're going through this discussion, I think it's helpful.
Sure. So we have three building facilities, locations, Ferris View, Bellevue, and Scott Street. Our brand spanking new one that's state of the art was built in 1997, and the Bellevue facility is currently, it was built in the late 60s, I think 67, somewhere in there. And it is a permitted transfer station. These are permitted by the state of Tennessee as a solid waste transfer station. It's where waste comes in from the residential routes, is consolidated into tractor trailers, and those tractor trailers go to the landfill. The importance of these facilities is it improves the turnaround time for a truck to get back out on the route. So you have a quicker turnaround time because you can dump at the transfer station, get back out on the route. And it also lowers the wear and tear on the vehicles. Those landfills are heavy industrial, a lot of nails, a lot of sharp things that like to cut hoses and pop tires, and it's not good. It's also a dusty environment, so it's just overall, it lowers, the more trips to the landfill, the lower the lifespan of the vehicle.
And you touched on something. So when we have high volume times of year, if we have a transfer station down, what happens to the routing day in, day out?
That significantly impacts the ability to complete routes.
Yep.
Yes.
And if they miss a route, it's not like it bumps a day. So it creates it's a chain reaction. It's a butterfly effect. And it just compounds itself. And you can imagine when we get into the fall and into Christmas, that time of year, between boxes, leaves, et cetera, it just becomes it just gets out of control.
There are only so many days in a week. And if you think about it, especially during high volume times of year, but when you have a holiday, and we have holidays, 12 weeks of the year? So when you have a holiday, it impacts service that week, but it also impacts service the following week. So when you start looking at the number of weeks in a year, and 24 of those weeks are already impacted by service, when you have a truck go down, when you have the transfer station go down, it significantly impacts the ability to do service timely.
And then I'll ask another question, just kind of a leading question, which is, it gets pretty warm here in this place. How many of our trucks have air conditioning?
That I don't know as well as
but it ain't
as
a lot.
Late.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the 2015, every truck since 2015 has been purchased with air conditioning, but I will say under DOT guidelines,
Yeah, I'm not trying to pin on.
heater going down will down a truck under DOT. Air conditioner going down does not down a truck under DOT, but it does significantly impact the timing and route performance.
Yeah, and look, these men and women can ride with the windows down if they choose, and I know it puts extra pressure on the HVAC, but at the end of the day, I think it's important for my colleagues, if they did know, to know that, in the middle of late July, August, these men and women are riding around every single day in and out of these trucks if they're in the cab, and it's, there's no reprieve for them. So I just think that that's important as we're talking about some of these things that are important. All right, that's the capital assets for the most part. Let's hop over to personnel and kind of talk about as best as you are able to articulate how we arrived in this current status as far as expenditures and cost, and what the vision is, and kind of the commitment from the administration if the council approves this rate, a lower rate or a higher rate. But let's just assume for the purposes of this conversation, it's the rate proposed. Let's start there. Just the kind of how we got here, kind of what's driving some of it, and then why it's necessary to do this.
So we have a couple of things that have been working against us. Increasing volume. Bulk waste, as we know, generally we perform fairly well with garbage and recycle. There's some hit or miss related to equipment, but generally garbage and recycle cart performance we do pretty well with. It is bulk waste that has increased tremendously over the last 6 years or so. Since 2017, those volumes have gone from about 52,000 tons a year to maybe between 130 and 170,000 tons a year. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
There's a slide that exists that shows the tonnage through COVID, and we've really, it's come down some, but it hasn't come down a lot.
Right. And so that that volume is the most difficult to pick up. It's the least, I guess, it's the most expensive equipment, the most expensive operator, and the least efficient material to pick up because it's not containerized. Generally, it's loose. We have to operate a grapple loader usually to pick it up. That's a, that can be a one-man, but typically it's a three-man operation. And it is also, it's easy to route 500 homes if you know that 500 homes are going to put a 96-gallon cart out, and you've got a tipper on the back of the truck. You hook the cart up to the tipper and flip it into the back of the truck, move along.
And how many municipalities, well, that's a bad way to ask that question. In your expert opinion, where is the industry moving?
The industry is moving to cart-only service. So the world in which we live, I mean, there are several, many, if not most, are moving to nothing outside the cart. Some are even going so far as to ban yard waste from their collection systems because it's twofold. It's inefficient to collect, but collecting yard waste without an effective or an efficient means to getting rid of it, what we're doing is we're filling up a economic driver in our community for jobs, which is our landfills. Because if you want any manufacturing jobs to come to town, they're going to want to know two things: your sewer capacity and and where your landfill is. And if you're filling up your landfill with leaves and sticks, you're not building jobs. You're not saving that capacity for job building opportunities.
Okay, and then I've got Councilman Logan, but I'll ask one or two more just kind of leading questions, just kind of get it out there. And Councilman Jones raised a couple of these issues, but I guess what I'll say for the body, so it's more than the statement, is ultimately in the 5 years that this has been before the council and the dozens of times that it's come back around, where we always kind of get to the sticking point is this. Taking into consideration the socioeconomics of our population demographics and balancing that with raising fees and rates is a function, the need to raise the rate is a function of allowing people to place whatever they want, whenever they want, at the curb and expect it to get picked up. There is not another municipality in this nation that allows that to happen. And everybody in Memphis knows it, even good actors all the way to landlord set-outs, which is another huge driver of this issue, where our teams will go out and pick up whatever is out on the curb, even if the landlord is a commercial owner at a multifamily building, which is an apartment building, where they are responsible to get a commercial picker to come get that, in addition to the leaves, et cetera. And then the last issue, and then I'll go to Councilman Logan, just to put there, is also, you have vacant homes. And with vacant homes, a really nice neighbor will walk over with their trash bags and set them down in front of that home. And ultimately, it's somebody's responsibility. You can say, well, it's got to be that property owner. Here's the rub in the practical world, is that in the practical world, that trash still has to get picked up because there are people that still live on that street. The problem is that person doesn't have an active utility, and so either the city just eats that cost, or they bill it and attach it to the parcel and put a lien on the property through either solid waste or public works, which I'm not even sure we really do in solid waste. And so ultimately, the fees to free that property up and the taxes that are usually delinquent with it far exceed what the property value is worth. So the property will be forever underwater and no one will want it. And it ends up in the Shelby County Land Bank or some other entity and goes through perpetuity. So it's a long explanation of saying we can raise rates and continue kind of how we do business in Memphis, or we can go at it at a different way and say we are going to change policy on how we allow people in the city of Memphis to dispose of their garbage. charging by the cart. If it's outside the cart, you're charged a fee based on tonnage. There are many different avenues, but we've never really settled in on one or the other. It's kind of, we don't want to raise rates and we don't want to charge people outside the cart. And so that's been the discussion here. I know that everybody's now in their 5th month here, and we've talked about it a few times, but that is where we have constantly ended up in the circular problem that is solid waste. Councilwoman Logan.
Thank you, Chair. We spent several months in the blight, a few months discussing it with everybody, with members of the community as well as people here. And these are some of the things that came out of the task force, because we know we can't continue the way we're going. We know it's not going to ever go back to how it used to be. So we know we have to move forward. And are we going to move forward with a city that is unkept and unclean and unsafe? No. And we only have a few options, the ones that make sense. I don't know, we talked about innovation. We talked about a lot of different things on our end. I would like to know, and I asked you about it the other day in terms of changing behavior. What does that look like? Because that's going to be a rub or a question. You can say we're going to change behavior, but how do we do that, and how long does that take, and what happens in the interim in terms of if people, like Chairman Carlisle said, that they'll take that bag and put it at a vacant lot, or they'll just continue to put stuff at the road, and then get fined. Okay, so if you're not paying the speeding tickets and you're not paying other things, are you gonna pay that? I'm not. What are the consequences into changing behavior? I know we don't want a dirty city. And so we have to really be realistic about the culture that we've created. Because I know when I, moved to Memphis, you put stuff out every 21 days, it was picked up. 21 days is a very long time. I felt like that was a lifetime, and it was just crazy. And so we went to, we all voted and went to another model. And now, post-COVID, that's not even working. So I do feel that we have to be realistic, because it may take not only that, looking at the increase, but also looking at the change in behavior, also looking at other options, all of those things to get us in a healthy place as it relates to our garbage and what we will allow and won't allow. And if you're not going to change behavior, we have to do something different on our end. And we have to give people options. If we are going to say we're changing policy and we're not doing that, then we have to say, and these are the companies, or here are some companies that will pick your waste up, point people in the direction we want them to go. But I definitely want us to not think it's a one and done or it's a quick fix, but let's look at how we change behavior if we have to do that as well, because that might not be an easy fix either.
Right. And Councilwoman, thank you for that. Yes, and the Blight Task Force, some of these ideas did come out of that, because that's contemplated with the enforcement team that we have, the 20-member enforcement team. That's intended not just to be a hammer. That's people dedicated per zone per zone to be out in the routes, because what we've learned with recycling nationwide and in Memphis, Am I there? I'm probably just not close enough. Sorry, but what we've learned with recycling nationally and here is the most effective way is person to person. We need somebody in the route communicating proper. I said it as solid waste etiquette, but we need to be engaged with folks and actively engaged, because our customers, they don't know a lot because they choose, they are not actively engaged with really any part of the government. I mean, they're going about their life, going to work and things like that, and I don't want them to have to think about garbage. So we need to go out there and try to engage them, to educate them, to communicate what the rules are. So that 20-member team, the solid waste drop-off locations, the convenience centers, these are things that are in this budget that are driving us to, because like you said, behavior change, it's going to take time. It's going to take years. It's going to take years to change people's behavior and to engage folks. So in the interim, these 100 people in collections are tackling what is the festering problem right now, which is the small piles becoming big piles, which slows up the larger equipment trying to pick up a single stick at a time. They get bogged down. We have added hand crews to add that capacity into regular collections week after week.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I've got Councilwoman White, Easter Thomas, and then Green. Councilwoman White, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if there's a way that you all can actually put this in a visual, but is there anything that you have to be able to show us what the increase is that would be, I guess, specifically towards like bulk waste? Does that make sense? So you're saying a big. Well, no, not what do you pick up, but I'm saying in terms of the increase that we're looking at.
I can't.
Is there a way to say this portion of the increase is attributed to the bulk waste that we have to pick up?
I can provide that. I can provide an estimated breakdown of garbage, recycle, bulk, like what the each service cost is.
Okay, and then the other question is, when you all pick up bulk waste, is that just, and I don't know if there's a way to separate this information from, and I guess this would just be a general guess because you probably wouldn't know, but in terms of, like the chairman was mentioning about being able to collect actually any fees that are charged, I guess I want to know how often are you all sending out those invoices and kind of the collection process. And then the last part before you go through the process, I want to know if it's an option. I don't know if it is or not. This is just me thinking, brainstorming. If it's an option, the same way that we add the flat fee to MLG&W bills, instead of filing a lien against the property, is there a way to add it to the MLG&W bill? But of course, if it's a vacant property or something like that, then it wouldn't work. So I don't know. I'm just thinking. Okay.
So the tagging process, and yes, again, with the 20-member environmental enforcement team, that would be dedicated to like beefing up that. We actually have, I think, contemplated in here about $1.5 million in revenue related to cracking down on those that are trying to steal service, the unscrupulous rental property owners that are dumping the house out there, contractors, and so forth. So what happens is when you identify one of the violations that's outlined in the ordinance, one of the things that we're directed not to collect by ordinance, we go out there, and when it's identified, we place a large yellow tag. It's about yay big, and it says violation on it, and it has checked on there the ordinance violation and a description of what that violation is. That serves as legal notice. It's placed on the pile. It's attached to the pile of offending debris. That constitutes the legal notice to the property owner that is a violation. It's not going to be collected. The ordinance allows 5 days for the property owner to remove it. We interpret that we interpret that as 5 business days, just because we want to give ample time for them to be able to remove the debris. So after 5 days, if it is not removed, the city will schedule it for removal. We will document it with photos and a collection report. We invoice the property owner $175 an hour, $100 an hour per employee that's involved, $175 per 20 cubic yard truckload. And that is sent as an invoice to the property owner of record according to the Shelby County assessor. If that is not paid, I believe within 60 days, then it gets sent down to the tax office as a special tax assessment. To answer your question about could we put it on the utility bill, I'm not sure. We don't, because the ordinance says it'll be assessed as a special tax assessment. So, okay.
Thank you, Chair. When Councilwoman Logan said, they spent probably about a year in the task force and came back with a lot of good information. But one thing that I noticed that we're that we're talking about is that it's a lot of things packed into this rate increase. So it's not just the bulk, it's not just the fleet, it's not just the employees, which makes it, as it sounds like, kind of tedious to separate in our minds. How do you go about different solutions? Have we explored for the bulk pickup? You know, there's changing behavior. It's going to take a long time. Nobody else does it, and obviously it isn't working well, or else we wouldn't have junk everywhere. Have we explored a opt out for just that part of bulk pickup?
No, we have not contemplated like itemizing our services by type. Like we charge every single family residential home is offered recycle, regardless of whether or not they choose to recycle. Bulk waste collection as well, just because of the billing.
But I mean, like it is itemized on our bill because we see the different lines of things that are itemized. Like you get an extra cart, that's itemized.
Right.
Recycling, that's itemized, whether you get it or not.
Recycling is not. Recycling. Okay. The service is the additional $10. I'm not sure if it shows up as a separate line. It may, but I think that's a different fee type. So I think it just shows the $39.96
right.
instead of
because recycling is good for everybody.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that's
whether you use it or not.
Yeah, right.
But I'm thinking of how to, because it sounds and looks like we're gonna be in a pickle. However, we look at it on what we need to do as far as solid waste fee. So I'm just thinking of ways for folks who maybe can't add a certain amount of money to their monthly budget, not a yearly property tax, but a monthly budget. What are some ways that folks can save money? So like when the commission did their wheel tax, they carved certain people out. This wouldn't be a thing today because everybody got trash, no matter how old or how much money you got. But maybe I'd like to see that with that, if that's legal, with a municipality, if we can do that. But like, okay, if you say I can save $3 off a $6 increase by not putting stuff outside the cart, sign me up. I'll save that. So I'm just trying to see. I'm trying to, right. Constantly. How can I tell people in my district this is how you can save a couple of bucks, right? Because to some people, this fee increase may not impact their pockets as much, but some folks, you tell them they're gonna have to pay an extra $7 to $8. Some folks, that's a whole hour worth of work.
And I hear Councilwoman where you're coming. I appreciate that. I guess the service, the ordinance is volume based, and that's why the additional cart is an additional cost. Our difficulty initially, and I'm happy to discuss more and brainstorm on it more, but the difficulty I see initially is policing someone that says, I'm not in the bulk waste program, I'm going to get $3 off, and then still putting stuff out. What do I do about it? Like, how do I, and then are they going to opt in monthly? I have bulk waste in the spring, but not the rest of the year. And so I'll pay the $3 in May, June, and July, but not the rest of the year.
I'd say if it's legal to do, I want to see what it looks like. I think all that stuff is minutia can be hashed out in paper if there's something that can actually save us some dollars.
I think that's it's definitely worth exploring. What I would say is it may be easier just to go at it the other way, which is the on demand, right? So instead of saying you're opting out, you opt in, saying, hey, and this is what we talked. Where did Ron get? This was part of what Rhonda's group came back with, which is, and sorry for everybody, one of the recommendations was basically and Philip, if I mess this up, correct me, was basically you're opting in. So like if you don't get to put bulk waste out unless you call and schedule it, and then you pay for that service. So it's basically an a la carte on-demand service that you pay for. And if you put anything else out on the curb, it's going to be on the curb until you call. So this kind of went back to what I was saying earlier, is like we always kind of talk about it and then we never really, and I say you guys are responsible for administrating, but we've got to indicate where the direction we want to go, or we're going to end up, duking it out. But I think it's a very fair point.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Green.
Oh my God. Okay, thank you. So I have a couple of questions, and to build on what we were just speaking about, I know that there are a lot of people that are already struggling with their MLDGW bill, and that also is going up over the next 3 years. And people are so far behind that, they're not going to be able to catch up, and this is just continuing to compound that problem. So this is for the administration. I know that we have some assistance in those funds, but as we continue to do rate increases, I would ask if we can continue to make sure that we have funds available for relief for residents who are unable, not just unwilling, not opting in, opting out, but unable to make these payments. I would also like to see, maybe from you, Director Davis, comparable policies in other municipalities as they have made these changes, and how they have implemented them. Like, did they start by saying no mattresses and no furniture? Or did they just start by saying no bulk waste? Because I'm not sure, even if you told me no bulk waste, if I wouldn't think at Christmas I could still put my Amazon boxes next to my recycling, as long as I broke them down. But I probably would understand that I couldn't put an old mattress out there. So, how specific, how do they roll this out to be able to educate the public? And what sort of stuff did the councils in these places put in place as far as ordinances? I think that, you've proposed a stair step. The first step is a huge step. And I will say, at least on the MLGW increases, it's the same over 3 years. I'm not super clear why we have to take this big of a step plus a $2 million hit to the general fund in the first year, as opposed to spreading it out. So if somebody could address that, that would be great. And then my last point is around the personnel part of this budget. Personnel is obviously the biggest bucket in all of our budgets, but especially in yours. And it's not just wages and benefits, it's also uniforms and things like that. And right now, what you've showed us is you have 51 vacant positions and only 31 of those are posted, but you're asking for 133 more. And I just need to know, how realistic it is that we'd fill 133. I understand we can dream and that we would hope and that would help us do what we want to do, but is that a realistic number for what we can actually get filled? Because otherwise we're budgeting for vacant positions.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Councilwoman. Yes, realistically, the 133 positions, yes, is realistically able to be filled. With that said, my experience, we're going to run about 10% vacancy, which is what we're at right now. We're going to run about 10% vacancy just with the hiring process. We bring on 15 crew people. They come on board. We have temp employees. We have about 75 to 90 temp employees at any one time. Those employees are part-time. But that's our talent pool that we draw from first when we fill the entry-level positions. Largely, we fill from within. So we have a supervisor position posted that gets filled generally from within, pulling somebody off a truck. Then we kind of have this domino effect of people percolating up to the higher paying positions. And then when the crew person who is on the back of the truck is promoted, as that happens, we run temps to cover that. We also cover absenteeism with temp employees as well. It's really just to minimize how hard we tag the first year, the general fund. If the lower that number goes, the higher the ask is from the general fund the first year, and it keeps it from spilling over into the next year, because what we're trying to do is build revenue, but we do bill monthly, but we are going to be a little bit behind as we start collecting. And then if it's not 23%, if it's 15%, then I need to have the operating dollars coming in from someplace, and that would be the general fund.
Yeah, and I'll just add, this is just me. I wasn't on the council, but I'd add that when did the fee start? When did we start this? Was it 2018 or 19? Was it 19 was that the first time we ever did this?
No, that was the last fee increase was 2019, 2020. I think it was voted on 19, went into January 1, 20. But the solid waste division has had a fee since somewhere around 2000. Now, initially it was like $7 a month. It didn't cover, and the general fund was subsidizing.
Second slide.
Yes.
Send that out. So there's a slide that demonstrates the amount of pull with the fee. So you've got the fee that's paying into the solid waste, and then the pull, it was like $39 million a year out of the general fund subsidizing solid waste. And so they went to the fee basis. So let me say this is also another option, and I'm just laying options out there, is we can zero this thing out. We can zero the fee out, but you're going to have to find a way to make up for it in the general fund. And we would basically have to go in and set, like we have, or we basically did for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the MATA, and pre-K before we altered pre-K for Fund 245, which is basically saying, this council is going to set aside X number of cents a year to go into this specific bucket of money, which was what former Chairman Jones's argument was, is that you mentioned the utility bills. We only collect solid waste fees from those that have active addresses, but trash is ending up on everybody's yard, whether they're there or not. And so the question, the debate at that time was, do you go away from the fee basis and bake it back into property taxes so every parcel is contributing to the solid waste, and you're paying it out of, quote, the general fund, but you're earmarking it ahead of time, so Philip knows how many cents on the dollar of the tax rate he's getting. So there is a cost benefit ratio there too. I just, again, the other really just blunt way to say that is you zero out the solid waste fee, you're going to have to increase the real estate taxes, but you're pulling in more parcels to pay for it.
And right now, I mean, for the constituents, they're getting taxed for this service twice. Okay, so we're on the same page. I was just laying the option out there. Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Okay, I got Councilwoman Cooper Sutton and then Councilwoman Walker. Councilwoman Cooper Sutton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. There, in your presentation, you said something about adding up to 9 community drop-off locations, and I just kind of know what that would look like and kind of give a definition of what you mean by that.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So right now we have a pilot project going with the strike team. That strike team, we are collecting data from the activities of the strike team and kind of identifying hotspots, areas around town for that their activity is seen as being needed more, where the illegal dumping activity and is happening. So what we're contemplating is identifying zip codes, districts, however you want to describe them, but identifying areas where these 9 convenience centers can be set up, because we're seeing the need of people going out and dumping things randomly places. Well, if I see in this neighborhood that this location is being dumped on day after day, week after week, well, can I find a current city piece of property that's underutilized that I can throw a couple of roll-offs on, staff a couple of people at, put some lighting and a fence around and secure it, make it a safe place where people can go and drop stuff off. You know, if we're utilizing it well, maybe put a recycle drop-off container for local rental properties that don't have residential recycling because they don't have nearby recycling available. Maybe throw a dumpster there for some organics, for yard waste and organics recycling. So, I mean, that's what we're contemplating, is these convenience centers where we can, but utilizing that strike team data.
You continuously speak about behavior change. And what I do know, that's a whole city thing that we're going to have to address. But when you say that, can you give me an example about when you talk about behavior change? Have you set a process in place on what this will look like and trying to change the behavior? I think I said the other day is I learned the difference in the handle of our garbage being toward the street and turning it back and not having that handle toward the street. Could you kind of talk about that? Because I didn't know that.
Right.
And a lot of the people in my community didn't know that. Did you all know that? That was a huge difference. I didn't. I'm just.
I always know, and it's printed on the can.
Yeah, well, see, I didn't read that.
Same color.
Yeah, well, see, I didn't read that because I was like telling my husband, no, don't do that. You can't do that. So my whole community, the street that I live on, I went to the end of the street and I looked and every one of them was doing the exact same thing I'm doing. So can you explain, huh?
So y'all not reading on your street.
No, we're not. But we are now since I'm council. I'm reading, don't you do that. But
can you explain
could you why it works and what the importance, thank you, Dr. Warren.
It doesn't make any sense when you think about it.
Yes, could you kind of help in what it looks like?
For the cart placement in particular, or just
Give an example.
Why is the handle away from the street more
Yeah,
important?
and then you said behavior, because these are behavior. If I ride around the city now, everybody handles turn
right.
to the streets.
The need for the handle, the placement of the handle is due to how the ease of the cart being hooked up to the truck for more efficient service. That's what it is. It minimizes the activity, the motion of the employee. It makes it safer. You'd be surprised how many.
See, by just on the direction of the cart alone.
Thank you. Okay, and yeah, right, and behavior change, like it goes with recycling. I mean, you teaching people about the commodities, the glass versus plastic versus aluminum. There's different value in those. Some are more recyclable than others, and it improves our system. The cost of the system, the cost of disposal, the cost of recycling is improved if we can get out and communicate these things.
So this pilot that we have been doing with the strike team, and we haven't not seen any data yet on what it looked like. I think it's been going for 3 months now?
It's about the second week of February.
Second week of February. And what are the outcomes? I know it's been a 3-man team, 1 truck. The equipment is horrible. I've already seen it. I've already been out there looking at it. I've had that opportunity. Your projection and you forecasting, I think you said that you need 11 full-time employees.
Year 1.
For year 1, for this blight strike team and the required equipment. What has it done with this minimum strike team? How has it affected the blight? Because we know that this is a huge issue here in the city. But running this pilot with such limited bodies and equipment, what impact has it done already?
So a couple of things. So what we've seen first, by going to these public meetings, people are talking about it. People are seeing the impact in their communities. So there's that anecdotal knowledge of people recognizing the effort, people recognizing the impact in their neighborhood, and they're appreciative of it. Yeah. So that's good. We are seeing those neighborhoods, that volume. We are identifying those places where it's just been forgotten and left. We go get it, and we don't have to go back. And we're identifying those hot spots that were recurring issues. One would be a place where we need to monitor, we need to pay attention to that, but where it's recurring, this is where we need better infrastructure, better communication, better education, leading to behavior change.
And then you talked about adding 20 more full-times to the current enforcement team that you already have to identify the violations. And so how many do we have now, and with you adding 20 more? Because currently the total is what, 500 and?
We have 515
15.
in the authorized complement. We have 0 enforcement. We rely on Public Works code enforcement to enforce the solid waste ordinance right now.
Okay. And their way, what did you say?
Well,
Okay.
It's just reactive, and we want to be proactive.
Okay. So back in 2012, we had 619 people at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what happened that we lost? I know COVID, but it had happened during somebody's administration.
I came to work for the city in 2012, and yes, there were 619 in the authorized complement. We were running well over 100 vacancies. When the authorized complement went down, we did not eliminate any live positions. These were positions that were vacant, and they were being held vacant to balance the budget, to minimize the impact to the solid waste, to the general fund. Right.
All right, and you're going to give us a breakdown. I think my colleagues have asked for a breakdown of the increase and where it's being allocated. Or did they? I think someone asked for that. If I'm not mistaken.
I can provide. I think it might be
because I don't want
someplace, but I
to
can send it to you.
be redundant of an ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Is everything, Councilwoman?
That's it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Walker.
Mr. Chair, communication and enforcement of existing collection rules. More specifically, I want to ask about the communications piece, and can we go back to this 20-member team? So is this 20 new employees?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is their job title?
So I have them earmarked in this budget as 2 environmental enforcement supervisors and then 18 environmental enforcement inspectors. Those would be the same titles used in code enforcement.
Okay, so they're going to be inspecting like code enforcement. So they're going to be doing more than engagement.
Yes, ma'am. They're going to be well versed in the solid waste rules and actively looking for those that are, opportunities where they can communicate and educate the public, but also and ultimately identify those folks that are stealing service, that are
Okay, so but they're not doing communications only.
Well, correct. It'll be kind of a 2-tier targeted behavior change.
Okay, because that's very helpful, and I may have been the only one, but that's just how it came across. They'll just be out doing community engagement around this. So, and what's the annual salary of just one of the team members?
The environmental enforcement officers. Let me see.
Or the total for the 20? Do you have an annual total for the 20?
I can break down personnel, but the total cost of the environmental enforcement team we're estimating to be around $1.5 million. But I'll get you the breakdown of the personnel, what the personnel is.
Okay, thank you. So they're out there to answer questions, share information, but they're going to also be doing inspections, and these are full-time positions, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And how many hours a day will they be working?
Right now they probably be 7 to 3, but we'd look at how effective they could be, and if the public is. If it's 9 to 5, that's more effective for the public, or.
But it will be an 8-hour day.
It will be an 8-hour day. These will be full time, and the environmental enforcement inspectors are asking 1733.
Okay, so if they're performing some duties for a said day and they finish before the 8 hours are up, what do they do with the rest of the day, or do they get to go home?
No,
and still get paid for 8 hours?
No, these positions would be. They'd have computers and be doing invoicing and billing for any violations that they identified. They would have office administrative type duties as well. They'd be a combination of in the field and in the office processing whatever paperwork they need to complete their task.
Okay, and that was 2 environmental supervisors, and then the other 18 were?
Environmental enforcement officers.
So I think it would be a great idea to, instead of having the 18, have 17 and take whatever that amount is and put it on a very strategic marketing plan. I get it. You've been exposed to some information and some data that says that one-on-one contact is going to be a good thing. But we need more than that. We need graphics, we need videos, PSAs, they're free, of course, engaging at events, but sharing the information on multiple platforms. And I would love to caucus with you surrounding that. But once again, it's a lot of territory to cover, and I think a very targeted and strategic marketing campaign around this, solely for this, would be great and definitely support the greater good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman, are you finished? Councilwoman Walker, are you?
I yield the floor.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm sorry, I've got Councilwoman Logan and then back to Councilwoman White.
Yes, I just want to add, Councilwoman Walker, communications and marketing was a part of the blight task force. One of the things about this environmental group is because there were a lot of community engagement around this, and constituents were asking that we not be reactive, that there be a proactive piece to having them go out looking for what's out there, not just waiting to get a 311 call, but actually on a systematic way, as a part of a process, going out in a strategic way to identify piles and bulk waste or construction debris, all of those things on a regular basis, so that they're not just waiting on a 311 notification or a constituent to call, because by the time the constituent call, it would have been sitting there for a while, and then that clock starts to tick. So there was also another conversation about what type of communication process we need to have, or communication plan, and funding for that, and how to collaborate that with the communications department of the city, so that all of those dollars could be boots on the ground. But I do hear you, and I do agree, and all of us on the Blight Committee agreed that there should be an improved, increased, and very robust communications process, putting QR codes on the trucks, and that would give information. And so I would just encourage all of you that have not had an opportunity to read the task force recommendations that we approved. That would be a good idea, and you can build on that.
Who was your analyst? Who was your analyst last year for that?
Julia.
So, well, anyway, what I want to do is get an email back out to everybody, those recommendations.
Okay.
So we'll have, that's a great point, Councilwoman. We're going to have those task force recommendations emailed out to any member, or to every member, so they can at least review them. It's a great point. I'm sorry, did you have anything else, Councilwoman?
No.
There. Councilwoman White.
Thanks, Chairman. Director Davis, the only thing I had about the 20 positions, my first question is, in terms of Public Works, and I want to make sure I'm correct, does Public Works have a code enforcement team as well as an environmental enforcement team? And then how would these 20 people be different from what they're already doing in the Public Works division?
He's always here to support. I'll defer to Director Connect to on the structure of environmental enforcement versus code enforcement.
And just to make it so that you all can know exactly what I'm trying to figure out, I'm just trying to figure out, is there overlapping in these positions And what does that look like? How many positions are actually necessary for the two?
That's
And
a
will they
great
be
question.
doing similar things?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Sorry, I'm going to jump in with Phillips. Environmental enforcement was a created new entity to address issues like this. And we created it because solid waste violations were proliferate, right? Illegal dumping being the biggest problem we are facing. So that's kind of the whole mindset with creating environmental enforcement, was having a group that just was going to combat solid waste violation types. And initially we did, like people leaving their carts set out at the curb, right? That's a violation of the solid waste ordinance. But illegal dumping has just dominated everything we've done. So we haven't had the resources to support solid waste like originally was envisioned. So we have 16, I'm sorry. So we have like 16 now environmental enforcement officers, and we have 2 supervisors. There's a combination of things going on here. So it's still acting up. So the goal being, by doubling it would be beneficial to address all the different types.
You know what? Hold up. This didn't work. It was a good experiment. No, let's go back to the table, Mike. We're going back.
Okay.
Sorry, your voice carries like mine do. That microphone's just not picking it up as it should. It's all right.
Maybe I just got to talk loud and proud. That was my goal, was to increase the size of environmental enforcement over time based on how we're performing and managing illegal dumping, and then, revisiting the solid waste ordinances. So Director Davis and I have talked about that, and what he's doing is just basically doing what I would like to do, which is grow environmental enforcement, because there's so many things out there, we just need more resources to combat.
And so would this new 20 be working with your 16? And would they have kind of the same rubric and same kind of rules, or would they be 2 completely different departments?
I think it's up to us. We both have discussed it. It could be a separate or it could be combined. It's really up to what's in the best interest of this, I guess, completing the mission. If solid waste is going to fund the positions and we put them into my environmental enforcement group, then they would just be dedicated to solid waste violations and doing only that type of work, while the other team would continue to combat the other issues. Or it could be a separate entity that works under him. I'm agnostic to it, but there's a good way to look at it, because I think if you have everybody working together, then there's a lot of resources to combat it holistically. That's just one way of looking at it, from my opinion. But we're open to that discussion.
One more question. And just I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So as of right now, the way that you all envision it, will there be any difference in the actual responsibilities of the 20 and versus the 16? Or will they essentially be doing the same thing? Will the 20 be in addition to the 16, or will they now be doing new tasks?
Can I hop in and answer that a different way? This is a better way to look at it, I think, for what's happening here, is they could all go work for Robert in solid waste, or they could be split off and put into solid waste, and the question is how you pay for it, right? So if they all go work for Public Works and they're assigned to just code enforcement to solid waste to the curb, they're getting paid out of the general fund. The trick here is they're trying to basically shove these employees into the solid waste fund, so that as solid waste only employees to be paid by the solid waste fee. So we're not picking them up on the general fund, And so it's I don't want to say it's semantics, but it's semantics other than how they're really paid. They're all doing, quote, the same job, and they're carving them off. Yeah.
No. So they have to be how they're funded is how they have to be structured and perform.
Right.
So that's the key distinction here. The general fund funds the positions I have. These are funded by solid waste funded. So they would have to be focused on solid waste related responsibilities that the solid waste division sets for them.
Right.
So that's the key distinction there.
So it's just as much how we build.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And the function.
Also in scope.
Yeah.
Very clear. Funding dictates scope.
That's right.
Okay.
All right.
So an increase in the rate is the funding for the employees, right?
For solid waste employees.
Yes.
Right.
Whereas general public works can do any sort of code enforcement, although I would say that I think that's a gray legal area.
Well, and just, full transparency on the budget, we did fund, it's kind of they're going to pay for themselves out of the funds they generate the first year. So
Let's hope.
Of
yeah,
course.
I'm hoping. That's my forecast. If we can collect. Now, so I just wanted to, before you took 20 people out and then expected the rate to go lower, it's not going to appreciably impact the 23% because that's how the forecasting was made.
Hey, Councilwoman White, are you finished? All right, I'm gonna let, if you don't mind, Councilwoman, I'm gonna let,
Yeah,
Councilman
go
Espinosa
ahead.
hasn't spoken, so Councilman Espinosa.
Yeah, and just real quick, this is the team right here, right?
Yes, this is
wanted to say
this is the this is the solid waste team. They do support me despite despite my personality. They do. So and I did want to answer. I think Councilwoman Walker, you asked supervisor environmental enforcement $69,600 a year. The environmental enforcement officer $51,021 a year.
Thank you.
And also another question that was kind of about communications, also baked in on slide. It's in very small print, but under miscellaneous expenses on the FY25 year-over-year expenditures, there is $200,000 in a communication campaign that we would work through the overall city communications program to communicate. We do know that there needs to be more than people out there shaking hands. We got to do a campaign.
Yeah, we'll have the communications team here on the 22nd for their budget hearing.
That was under what?
That's in under my. If you look on slide eight, under materials and supplies breakout, that miscellaneous expenses, over on the side it says equipment for blight management and communication.
Okay, I didn't check
That it's again small print.
All right, thank you.
All right, Councilman Warren.
Quick question, where are we with compost?
All right, can we,
Quick question, but not for Mr. Connect.
very brief.
Yeah, quick, where are we with compost?
So composting RFP is either out or getting ready to go out with purchasing. I know it's been approved with the purchasing team to go out for bid. We are hopeful to have interested parties and award a vendor for that. We do contemplate moving forward with composting in this budget.
So as of July 1?
Yes, I hope to have something awarded by then. I think we said we would put it out to bid. What is it, May? Well, let's say September 1 because I think we're going to put it out to bid for 60 days.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and we'll make a note when that award occurs, and that I think we all know where it's going. But when that award occurs, we'll have them come to the Solid Waste Committee. I'm sure the council would love to say hey.
Yes.
Councilwoman Logan, I'm sorry. Did you still have any questions or comments? Councilwoman Logan, did you have any questions or comments?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
About the equipment. I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
About the equipment and the lifespan of the equipment and where we are with the equipment is so essential and so important to make sure that the quality and how the quality to me of service that we are getting with the equipment. I need you to really kind of be honest and open and just transparent where we are with this as equipment and how far behind as far as trying to get parts. Where are we? I mean, what do we need to get sufficient and adequate equipment, bring it up to date where we are, and what are we looking at as far as maintenance and time? I heard something about getting parts has been an issue because of the wear and tear of our equipment. And I want to talk about the safety of our equipment for our city workers and employees. To me, it's very important that they're out there every day. And we know, I mean, Councilwoman Walker talked about how we started back in the 60s with 1,300, and now we're down to this. But this has been an ongoing issue and an ongoing problem. I'm hearing and I'm understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, over the years, just getting quality equipment to do sufficient the job. And so I'm trying to understand what is that going to look like? Is it included in the fee increase that's happening now? And what do we really need? Where are we? The numbers. If you can't get it now, bring it back. The breakdown. How much of our equipment is down? What we're actually working with, and how far behind are we? I mean, because blight and all of this is just totally out of hand. And what we don't want to do, and what I don't want to see, if I'm going to continue to live here in this city, is we're back here again and again and again doing the same thing over and over. And we got to get it right. This is the time to get it right. Change is hard. We already know that. And we are in very critical place here in Memphis. I mean, we got raises and tax increases everywhere just coming out of our wazoo. But what we need to know, you've given us a projection, you've forecasted some things, some numbers, just talking and me asking a lot of questions. So where are we with this equipment?
Okay. No, our truck's a great question. Our trucks are right now averaging about 14 years old. We have about between 400 and 450 pieces of equipment, rolling stock. We would like, in this budget, we are contemplating it being 10 years, 8 to 10 years. That's the high end of industry standard. But again, to minimize the impact on the fee increase, I'm not trying to be overly aggressive in driving this rate up unnecessarily, because I am sensitive to how it's funded. But about 47% of our existing equipment has been on the road more than 12 years. Was purchased prior to 2015. And so we anticipate in this budget, I think the number is over the next 10 years, buying about 360 pieces of equipment over the next 10 years. What this does is allows us to plan out a purchase program where we are buying basically 10% of what we need every year, so that every 10 years, the truck's been replaced. And it's just necessary to drive down our maintenance cost, improve our employees' well-being, safety, and ultimately have readily available and reliable equipment to service the public.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, and look, if you guys want extra breakdowns on lifespan, and we'll have general services here, which is really Councilwoman, your question was directed, is really general services, because it's especially our trucks are so highly specialized. And I mean, Antonia's here, but that's a good question. We'll dive into that at general services when we talk about fleet, because it's one thing to work on a Dodge Charger. It's another to work on these specialized pieces of equipment. And we really had issues in COVID, not only with employees and parts and supply chain, but also in ordering. I mean, ordering new trucks. I mean, I think we ordered. Robert, did he go? Yeah, we ordered a couple of street cleaning trucks. I think the lead time was like 36 months. Yeah, it was three.
They were 18 to 24 months for the sweepers.
And so the kicker is, and he just said it so well, is the succinct thing is the city fleet and the divisions that they operate with have got to get on a regular maintenance schedule and a regular capital schedule. And
to that point, I mean, these are built to spec. So we issue the specifications and they build them to our specifications. That's anywhere 10 to 14 months for solid waste, for garbage trucks right now. And I say that knowing that the slots, I mean, they have a certain number of slots nationwide for Republic Services and Phoenix, Waste Management in Houston, Phillip in Memphis. And so those slots, when they're filled, I wait until next year. I can go on and order them, but I wait until next year. And what happened during COVID is people were getting slots, and because the demand got so high, because there were going to be some changes with EPA emission standards and things like that, their big customers wanted more slots, and so they basically canceled everybody's order and had everybody reorder.
And I'd say one more thing too. I mean, this just goes back to our model, but our model is different than anywhere. So when you're customized or to spec, and 95% of the industry is utilizing a dump arm, or automatic, and we're not, we're asking for something that's not, our economies of scale and buying power is different. So, I mean, that's also a problem for us.
So that's gonna cause training, am I right? Because if we are ordering specs and special order specs, will that include special training as well? I mean, when we do this, because.
So Councilwoman, I hear your question, but right now, what Philip is stating is he's ordering the equipment based on his complement. If we changed and went with the industry, we need the training. But right now, he's ordering that equipment based on his complement. So it's not the training, it is the fact that I'm ordering a truck, or we're ordering a truck that's totally different than most of the industry. So it's gonna take them longer to create that truck for us, whereas they're rolling industry-wide trucks. Okay.
All right, I'll ask one final question. No cue. If we do nothing, what is the impact on the general fund?
So if we do nothing, service doesn't change. And there was a slide in my presentation from yesterday on this. But if we do nothing and they change, a little more than $3 million I need from the general fund next year on top of what I may or may not need closing out this year. But I think it's 3.2. And then just imagine that going up $1 million, $1.5 million every year after that.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, appreciate you all. All right, let's go to Councilman White, and then, or was yours germane to that comment? Can I let him make that comment, and then we'll go to Councilman White?
There would likely also be capital implications as well. I think it was several years ago that solid waste borrowed $7 million from general fund and in the process of paying it back too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that, and also just understand doing nothing means I'm not increasing my debt service. So I'm not buying any new trucks. So as trucks go down,
that's what he's saying. What he's saying is you got to use this.
It'd have to be. I'd be.
We got to use geo bonds or city lease dollars, but one way or the other, it's coming out of the general fund, whether it's the debt service or it's not. Councilwoman White.
I was just going to ask for the same. I know you were going to bulk waste makeup of the increase. I guess my same question would be, what would be? Probably wouldn't be for this budget season, but at some point, I would like to see what it would look like if we did cut off all the other services like we were talking about. What those numbers would look like in the future.
Yeah, I think we have some of that. I mean, I think we have some of that work done. It just may need to be updated.
Yeah.
But we can definitely get you that. I think.
Yeah.
I think
Are you talking about just itemizing the garbage, recycle, bulk waste, like by service?
About the bulk waste, because it seems like that seems to be a big part of what you said, the increase in terms of equipment.
Right.
And so I would like to see what it would look like if we.
Okay.
Councilwoman Walker.
A copy of the incentive plan that the crew chief and crew persons are under?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. That's in the ASWMAIN MOU, memorandum of understanding, and I'll share that with you and where that cited. And just a note on that is next year is that collective bargaining agreement that agreement is
that memorandum of understanding will be renegotiated the following calendar year.
It is open for the whole book is open next year.
Yeah, now what I would say just to all members is every collective bargaining unit's MOU is available on the city's website if you ever want to read it. I've got Councilwoman Green and then Councilman Spinoza.
Director Davis, did you say that you're going to need funds from the general fund this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have an estimate?
$2 million. This year, no. I'm trying to. We're calculating, just making sure. My intent was to come in, utilizing basically zeroing out the fund balance and not needing anything more this year. But I've got to do one more double check to make sure I don't anticipate any failing funds for this year. So let me double check. But I just.
Yeah, this is just another one of the things that are coming up again right here at the end of the year that we don't know about. Like as we're trying to plan for the budget and we're trying to see what we have available in the fund balance to move into the next budget. Again, I just would like for us to be a little bit more proactive in sharing that information with the council because this is the first time we're hearing about it on May 8th.
So, Councilwoman, if you recall, maybe a couple meetings ago, Director Davis brought to you all a resolution reallocating some of his funds to cover his operation. So again, it's it's standard practice, and we've asked all the directors to your point, to collect that information so we understand what we're looking for.
Just quick math, you said, so if we did nothing and you needed 3 million, maybe?
I think three, a little bit more than 3 next year, and then it goes up $1.5 million each year after that. If I remember the slide correctly, I think ultimately by 2027, I will have drawn over $27 million out of the general fund.
So just a thought for the council to consider, not really a question, but correct me if I'm wrong. So if we did nothing
and service doesn't improve
and worked a little harder, tried to educate our citizens on other options and ways to handle things, and if we borrowed $3 million, debt service, it would cost the city of Memphis $180,000, right? Good.
Thank you, Councilman. Yeah, colleagues, look, a good discussion today. It's a lot to think about. Ultimately, the do nothing is going to be untenable. My ask of my colleagues is over the coming days and weeks as we start to wrap up the budget, this is not, how do I say this the right way? This is not a part of the budget, but it is a part of the budget because you can't ignore it. The left hand has to know what the right's doing. And so my ask is that if you have thoughts or ideas like opting in, opting out, anything like that, please send those inquiries so that the administration can work those out, and then we can have a group conversation about those, what direction we want to go, and it will make it more productive along the way. And then again, staff's going to get the blight task force recommendations out, and there's a couple older slides, Philip, I'll get with you and we can go over, but we've had I can tell some of the questions. I think there's a couple of older presentations that may be beneficial just to say, hey, look, we've discussed this here, some of the metrics. And then last thing, all right, I'm good with solid waste. Last thing is, when do you think, Chief Person, you're going to have the month of April closed out?
Tentatively, we're looking at May 10th to have it closed out. That's
Dang, man. All right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. But why have
I heard the word tentative, though.
Yeah, well, I'm going to qualify it. I do want to make sure, I think we worked with Meredith a little bit on this. I do want to make sure that you will have time for the operating and the CIP Q3 reports tomorrow.
We will make time for it. If we have to bounce Manny out of here, we will. We will. Tomorrow.
Okay.
But yes, it's very important that we do that. Yesterday was kind of a loaded day.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned until tomorrow at 3 p.m. where we're going to hear from the finance division and engineering. Comms has gotten moved to the heel. I think that's it. All right, we're adjourned.